Now it came on. We'll call the regular meeting on November 20th, 2018. Join me in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. With that, we come to the part of the meeting that we call public comments. Anybody wishing to speak to the county board will allow 5 minutes, as long as you're being respectful. It's our standard practice not to answer specific questions. We will listen, learn, and understand, not argue, debate, or discuss during the public comment portion. We will direct staff to get back to you if you have any questions after they've had time to gather the facts, speak to the county attorney on any legal issues if necessary, and review the matter thoroughly. With that, welcome.
My name is Karen Johnson-Leitner, 15735 38th Street, Mare, Minnesota. I'm not representing Carver County Attorney's Office, Sheriff's Office, staff, or the Hollywood Township Board. I am a relevant public watchdog. And in November of 1999, because of the tower that John Linder built, I appeared at the first Hollywood Township meeting. There was big concerns, no information in the paper, nothing to help us out finding out what's going on. What got me there was because of the fact that the location of the radio tower was supposed to be on Highway 7 on 40 acres, but it did not go through. So then it was supposed to be behind the Hollywood Township shed, and more mistakes were made, and 5 acres was supposed to be used, 1 acre was going to be used for a guide wire, giving $5,000 to the homeowner that actually had the land next to the site, but he refused to have anything to do with this radio tower at 820 feet up in the air. Then it got dropped, 659 feet. Transmitter was an old transmitter. It was taken off the Empire State Building and brought to Hollywood Township. It was an old transmitter, 96.3. Constantly there was people that could have put red flags up. They chose not to. People in 1997 were coming to the meetings and they were putting red flags up and concerned. In 98, and they were not listened to. And they were not told the true story. So what I'm doing now is I'm walking into this room and I'm going to, in 2009, expose everything that happened. It's going to probably be something that you can't deny. And that's one of the things we'll get back to, or whatever it is. It's not going to happen. They tore down trees. They put in wetlands. They did whatever they could to put the 659 feet radio tower in. So what I'm saying is in District 4, 3,237 citizens were looking for a change. Being accountable to all citizens is part of the paycheck. Going to committee meetings is part of the paycheck. So I stand here today and I wonder how come in the United States of America we will take off and we will go to other lands and we will protect their lands and protect their citizens. But when it came to Hollywood Township and the people that wanted to protect what was going on, and it's November 2019, you look at those citizens like they're wrong. You look at those citizens like they were bothered. There's people dead. I did the dead count. And my people that I'm working with, luckily, that I was able to, top people in the world, they're going to be here. They're going to be helping out. The cancer stick killed people, and you can deny it, or you can start really waking up. But January 2019 is going to be new days, new personality, and you're never going to see anything like this ever in your life again. I did this for the children. I did it for the people that had died. Carver County, wake up, because it's time.
Well, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the board this morning, or this afternoon? Seeing none, we'll move on. Commissioner Ishii.
If I could, Mr. Chair, thank you. I think we haven't met now for a couple of weeks. I just want to congratulate my two fellow commissioners and our county attorney on their bid for re-election, and glad to see that happened. Both Attorney Metz and Commissioner Workman had the pleasure of running unopposed. I've never enjoyed that in my time here, but I suspect it would make life a bit easier. Our fellow Commissioner Lynch had a variety of candidates that ran for his seat, and I think in the never-ending wisdom of the voters, they granted him 63% of the vote, which tells me that all the things we've heard about the horrors of solar gardens and on and on and on throughout the last year or two. The voters decided maybe weren't quite as bad. And in the words of Karen, that was just up at the podium, back in June or late May, when the filings were almost done or they were done, I remember her talking about what a great election it would be. And I jotted it down here and stuck a little post-it note, excuse me, up here. And you were right, it was a great election and it went very, very well. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Congratulations
I'd like
again to you,
to
gentlemen.
echo your comment, the fact that congratulations to the three candidates that won their election.
I'm sorry,
Thank
but
you.
I need to respond to that.
Karen, you're out of order right now, so we
Okay.
are moving on. So, agenda review and adoption. Is there a motion? Anybody have any
Move the
additions or
agenda as-
corrections?
Move the agenda as presented.
I would second.
Motion by Commissioner Ishii, second by Commissioner Lynch to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, the approval of the minutes of the October 30th, 2018 regular session.
So moved. Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Commissioner Workman, second by Commissioner Maluchnik. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, community announcements. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share with the community? Commissioner Maluchnik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Veteran Service Officer, Veteran Service Office is offering financial coaching to our veterans, and they need to contact that office to sign up for that. And then they do things like evaluate your current financial situation, develop a budget, eliminate debt, build credit, pay bills on time, save for retirement, handle credit report disputes, and take control of your finances. So some of our veterans need those kind of, it sounds like all of us might need some of those, that kind of help. But anyway, for veterans that need that service, we now provide that through our Veteran Service Office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I think that is being offered through the extension.
I'm sorry, you're quite right, yeah, working with our good friends at the University of Minnesota Extension Office, so thank those folks, particularly the Carver County office.
Exactly. The only community announcements I have to share is this Thursday is Thanksgiving. And if by chance, whether it's your decision or the distance involved, that you find yourself without a meal handy, come to St. John's. St. John's down here, 4th and Oak in Chaska, is having a community dinner for anybody and everybody from 11:30 to 1. The whole community is invited. So like I say, if by distance or decision that you find yourself looking for a place to have a meal, come down to St. John's. Commissioner Lynch.
Mr. Chair, if I could, at this Saturday, on November 24th at 11 a.m., CCVM, the Carver County Veterans Memorial, we're having a small groundbreaking at the new Veterans Memorial in Mare. You can see the memorial itself is up. The stone pavers are not set yet, but the memorial is up, and I thought it was going to be great, but I was wrong. It's spectacular. It really is. So if anyone gives a chance, you come by at 11 or just swing in. The parking lot's in, and you can take a look at it. It's going to be really spectacular.
Repeat that. 11 o'clock, what date?
24th, Saturday the 24th.
By that time, you should be all done shopping anyway, so.
Correct. Day after Black Friday, you'll be done.
You'll be broke, right?
Quick shopping.
Okay.
Spend it all.
Any other community announcements? If not, we move on to item number 5, the consent agenda.
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Commissioner Luchnick, second by Commissioner Ishii, to approve the consent.
If you want to touch on it, you should again.
Well, we have quite a few items. Encore received a donation. We have right-of-way acquisition on the 41 Lyman Boulevard project. We're final payment for the 101 bridge. We've authorized right-of-way acquisition again for 44, Highway 44 bridge project. That's about the major ones that on the consent. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 on our agenda is the Farm Family of the Year. And with that, I'll call up Mr. Rick Carlson. He is our chairman, local chairman of the University of Minnesota Extension Committee. And Mr. Carlson, come up and introduce our Farm Family of the Year.
Okay, thank you. So on behalf of the Carver County Extension Committee, we'd like to congratulate the Winkemeyer family and also thank you people for having us in and recognizing them and all that. So just a couple of comments about the farm family. I just love that award that, for the people of the county. I've been here, I moved here in '95 and worked with the dairy people in the county and that. And I'd have to say, well, first of all, Carver is a great agriculture county, and I hope it continues to be. And working with those farmers all those years, they are the backbone of the county, the heart and soul of the county, and they really bring a lot to it. And there's really some great hard-working farm families out there. And the Winkemeyers certainly are a true farm family too. So with that, yeah, they're certainly a deserving recipient of the award. One other little thing, well, there's, okay, in the agenda, there's a write-up about them, and hopefully everybody can read that. I'm gonna let them kind of talk about that and their farm family. And
Bring them up to the podium.
yeah, come on up.
Jeff and Tina Winkemeyer.
Carly's.
Oh, Carly's there.
Okay. Well, there's a few, unfortunately, that didn't make it today, but they can talk about that. But I guess I got to relate one little tidbit of information that probably nobody knows, and they probably forgot about. Because we purchased a llama from them years ago.
Priscilla, and we looking for her at the fair every year.
Still there. So, but anyway, a couple of things here. Okay, your name is on the Carver County Farm Family plaque, which is at the Extension office. And you can have that, and we'll take it away from you later. And then a nice award for being the farm family. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Congratulations to you people.
Thank you.
And the whole family. You too. So, and they can say a little bit
Congratulations,
about
Jeff
their
and Tina.
family.
Say a few words.
Yeah.
Who's second?
Go for it, Jeff. Go for it.
I'm not much of a speaker. Well, I don't know. What am I supposed to say?
Explain to me why you're called the 7C Dairy.
Well, we kind of thought about it a while, figured out a name, and we have 6 kids, and their names all start with C, and Tina's full name is Christina, so the 7C Dairy, it sounds kind of neat,
So you're the odd man out?
I guess so,
Oh, that's good. I know at the county fair, we always see a lot of Winkemeyer cattle up there, and they always do very well. And we want to thank you for, you don't get to show all of them because you're participating in the program that leases animals to different 4-H members. And that's a lot to be proud of. Thank you very much for that.
we've been pretty strong 4-H throughout the years. The dairy judging, coaching, and Tina's done a lot of stuff through 4-H and ADA. Try to do as much as we can for that program,
Anytime that there's kids that are interested in agricultural and farming, we try to support them and encourage them to get involved with different things that can maybe lead to more things in their life. So.
Right, there's the lease program for showing animals, and they've all been non-farm kids, at least from us. We've had maybe almost 10 over the years.
And if you're leasing from the Winkemeyers, you're getting quality cattle. I mean, that's always
Thank you.
very evident, not only at the county fair, but the state fair. A lot to be proud of.
I guess we're currently the 6th generation on the farm. We're also recognized this year for the Sesquicentennial Farm, 1859 is when our farm was homesteaded, so that was kind of a neat thing also this year. We have one son that's hoping to take over and continue on, so
hopefully economics permit it. It's not
Commissioner Ishii.
I was just gonna say, the Vinkmeyers, first of all, live 2 or 3 miles north of me. They live in Benton Township, south of Ungers, like myself. I would consider them the epitome of a farm family of the year. We've had different ones in here over the years. They've always been great families, but these folks are good, hard-working, honest, salt-of-the-earth farmers, and we don't have a lot of dairy farmers that are left, you know. You and I know that we came through a period in time where farm families either had to expand their herds and compete or get out of the business. And they've done an excellent job. They're a credit to their township and to this county, and we thank you for all you've done.
Thank you. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about the farm. We milk about 140, 150. We also started raising dairy steers, just to kind of, you know, get into something else a little bit, diversify. We run about 350 tillable acres, corn, soybeans, and alfalfa. Mostly family labor, a couple high school kids that help out. And I don't know, that's pretty much.
That's the way farming used to be for some of us. I mean, family help was what all you had. And now, but we never had 140 cows. And you have multiple breeds.
Yeah.
How many breeds are you?
We've got all 7 breeds.
All 7 of them.
Kind of overgrown 4-H hobby, you know. Each kid kind of like their own breed or two, so we just kind of got into all of them.
Yeah, because they didn't want to compete against each other, so they had to have their own breed.
That's the nice way of doing it. Any other comments by the board? If not, congratulations. I know if you were like anybody else, it's that time of the day you start looking, hey, it's just about time for chores, so we won't hold you, but thank you for coming and joining us at the meeting, a well-deserved honor. With that, it brings us to item number 7, a public hearing on floodplain zoning codes and map changes. With that, is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Lynch, second by Commissioner Workman, to open the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now a public hearing. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jason Melke, Senior Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Again, this is a public hearing. I'd like to enter into the record the proof of publication and mailing of the hearing notice, the Planning Commission resolution and orders, in record, the draft ordinance, number 88-2018, the draft county zoning map, the draft county board resolution, the DNR conditional approval dated August 27th, 2018, and the FEMA letter dated September 17th, 2018, and any and all other attachments that were as part of the file. Planning Commission recommended approval of several text changes and reorganized sections in the zoning code, as well as updates to the official county zoning map. Again, this ordinance is specific to updates to the floodplain regulations, as well as the floodplain overlay district of the official map, and it only pertains to the unincorporated areas of Carver County. Under the FEMA standards and requirements for implementing the floodplain management measures for the county, new FEMA maps should take effect December 21st, 2018. So therefore, as part of that, the Carver County is required to also go through and do an amendment and ultimately adopt the zoning code sections of our ordinance of the code that pertain to the floodplain, basically to incorporate the new maps and, again, like I mentioned, the textual updates to correspond with the approved FEMA flood insurance rate maps and floodplain management measures. Now, this process has been going on, has been anticipated for quite some time, and in June we did receive our official notification from FEMA and the DNR that we can proceed with moving forward, updating our zoning code, and ultimately getting this final step, which is adopting this ordinance in the map, so we can move forward and utilize that from here on out. The proposed amendments include updated language, zoning language, and map references, as well as adding and revising definitions as part of the zoning code, as well as updating the floodplain overlay district boundaries based on FEMA and DNR's review and approval. These flood maps that we are going to be using, we have been utilizing up to this point because it is the most current information we have, along with the current approved flood mapping. It's more accurate, and there's a lot of areas that didn't follow contours in the old mapping, which now everything is based on a flood elevation. The changes are required in order to continue participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. What that program does, it enables property owners to participate, or communities that are participating to purchase flood insurance protection. That is administered by the government and ultimately helps them so that if there is a case where they have a loss due to flooding, they can be provided with some additional insurance or additional protection. If FEMA does not receive the documentation that's required by the effective map date, which again is December 21st, 2018, FEMA will suspend the county from the flood insurance program. So we are on a deadline here to get this all taken care of, and we are on track to get that accomplished. The DNR's role in this is they are kind of the middleman. They are requiring or requesting we submit this final documentation to them by December 18th, and they in turn make sure it's all there and then send it off to the FEMA regional office for the final approval. The changes to the zoning code, again, this is something that the DNR had provided the county with a model ordinance. A lot of the language that's in there we already had in the ordinance, but as you can see, there was a lot of strike through and underlining, meaning adding and subtracting of language. Some of it was done to rearrange it, put it all in a specific section of the zoning code, so it's easier to find and easier to follow. But for the most part, they're just, minimal changes. There were some substantial changes, and one of them is in regards to, everybody always takes a look at and utilize, as we do, we have to utilize the 100-year flood elevation when determining and looking at properties. And they're getting away from using the term 100-year and going to a 1% flood based on the amount of rain and everything we seem to get. That's a little change, but it's still a substantial just because it's a change in wording. The other substantial change is in the past, in the floodway section, a road or bridge culvert replacement required a conditional use permit approval. That has been taken out of the conditional use permit section and is actually being placed in just a permitted use. And the reasoning for that is a lot of the jurisdictional review, whether it be the state, the DNR, the Army Corps of Engineers, they're already looking at these projects and reviewing it and approving it based on state and federal standards. And it's just been another layer of approval, having it in the conditional use permit section for the local level. And the DNR and FEMA has decided to take that out of there and place it just in a permitted use. On the mapping side of things, as shown on the overhead here, again, the zoning code changes require an update to this map. The only thing that's changing on here is the floodplain overlay district. During the Planning Commission meeting, we did have a correction to be made. which was in regards to the color scheme that was on the map versus what was actually in the legend. And using blues and the different layers that show up on here kind of made the coloring off from one to the other. What we've done here is we've used gray to identify the floodplain overlay district, and then that obviously lets the shoreland areas continue to remain the colors they were intended to be. Other than that, really there are no other changes. The county attorney's office has reviewed the proposed ordinance language. The planning commission resolution is attached. The following items have been attached for the board's consideration, and again, that is the draft ordinance number 88-2018, the proposed zoning map with updated floodplain overlay district, a letter from the DNR providing conditional approval of the ordinance dated August 27th, 2018, a letter from FEMA emphasizing the flood insurance program requirements, and that was dated September 17th, 2018, and the draft county board resolution. So today we're requesting, again, the motion already was made to open the public hearing, a motion to close the public hearing, and finally a motion adopting a resolution enacting the ordinance, amending the county zoning code and also the official zoning map.
I'm gonna open up for the county board to have any questions for Jason, but Jason, I got two of them myself. The first one is, it says FEMA will suspend the county from the National Flood Insurance Program. What they mean is the residents of the county, because this really doesn't affect the county ourselves, does it?
It ultimately affects us as a whole. We're a community that is in the program. We regulate the floodplain overlay district, so it does have an impact on us, but more importantly, yes, it does have a major impact on the residents of Carver County.
And the other question I have is just looking at the map, obviously you can see, and you mentioned that this affects only the unincorporated areas. If somebody lives in the city, in an incorporated area, what rules are they under? How can they get flood insurance?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, they do have the same guidelines that they need to follow. It's just they're a different jurisdiction, therefore they still are required to go through the same formality process, and I do believe that they do have the same deadline.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody on the board have a question for Jason? Commissioner Lynch.
If I could, and I think you might have just answered it. There was an issue up in the city of Watertown, I think you're probably familiar with it. Now, did that change? There was an area, it was a current development, that was actually on high ground, it was suddenly placed in the floodplain, and we'd like to talk about it a little bit, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Lynch, that particular topic is being discussed, and the county and the city of Watertown are working with the DNR to get that resolved. We do have to go through a letter of map revision for that, and the DNR is playing an active role in providing all the detail for that. We will have to, the city is taking the lead on that particular item, and at some point there might be some sort of resolution, a letter of support or something that comes before the county board to ultimately have the county be part of that application process. But we are currently working with the city on that.
Any other questions from the board? Commissioner Workley.
Mr. Chairman, so therein lies sort of my anxiety over a large passage of this sort of thing. It's sort of what I don't know, and I don't know if others may have had any concerns or complaints. This colored map is pretty much not detailed for maybe even the homeowner. I do know that some years ago, Hennepin County started fiddling around with their map, and I knew a lot of people who suddenly found themselves in a floodplain with little recourse. And so
from the planning commission to whatever our process is, how would I have out there known that I might have that problem?
Jason, how would the general public be aware that these changes have been made, are being made? What input would they have had, or do they have, I should say?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Workman, you know, this process has been taking place since 2000, I believe, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there, where FEMA's actually taken the data that's been provided to them, the study information, so on and so forth, doing publishings in the paper. I think in one of the earlier letters they submitted to let us know that we needed to start this process dating back to June. They had indicated that these flood hazard determinations within Carver County were published in the Chaska Herald. So there's notifications. I think the cities actually have held meetings early on to hopefully get people to show up and find out more about this. But you're right, this is just our official county zoning map. The more detailed information on this is all done within the GIS application. If a property owner, if they already have flood insurance, they know they're in. You know, and looking at this mapping, there might be areas that have changed as far as farm field, low-lying areas are now in floodplain. But as far as homes and structures, there aren't too many changes based on this new information. We've done a pretty good job of, in the past, working with property owners and going through that LOMAR process, where a surveyor goes out and surveys the property, determine whether they're in or not. So I think for the most part, we've done a very good job of keeping property owners and the general public on notice, as have the planning commission meetings with our public hearing notices. At the planning commission meeting, we provided some maps that identified, kind of zoomed into each township, so that some of the residents that were here and the planning commission members, they're the ones that requested that, could get a little more detailed or more specific to a township. It certainly doesn't provide the detail of placing property lines on it or structures. But yeah, if there's a property owner that has concerns, they contact us, and then we sit down with them and use the GIS application, which is extremely detailed.
Other questions, concerns, thoughts? This is a public hearing. If there's anybody here from the public that would have any comments on this application, this map change, now's the time to come forward and identify yourself and give us your concerns.
Hi, my name is Mike Lynch, and I want to talk about the area in Watertown because I want to put a townhouse in there, and if it's in the floodplain, that's a big concern. Now, my main question is, he said this has got to be, you want to pass this on by December 18th. Does this resolution to get that out of floodplain have to be done by then? Will it be easier is it easier to get it done before you pass this on? Or is it going to be a lot harder to get it done after it's passed on and done?
Those are two good questions. Jason, you want to respond to that? And I think are we talking two different issues? Is this city of Watertown and what resolution that we're going to concern would be the county's resolution?
I think they go together because it is town.
Get closer to the mic. I think you can pick you up, but just
I think it goes together because
you got a good voice. I like that.
It is town, but yet it was put into the floodplain, and it's my understanding that the DNR, FEMA, the county, and the city of Watertown has to come together to get this pulled back out. So I think the two questions, kind of go together, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Jason, what can we comment?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, the item that he's referring to is, again, the townhouse development close to the high school in Watertown. It is in the city limits. We are working again with the city of Watertown and the DNR, and the DNR has been in contact with FEMA to kind of ask the information that they've put together in the updated modeling that the DNR has provided, if that will meet their criteria for them to review. Sounds like it will. But it's the formality process. None of that will get resolved before this all takes place. But at the same time, it is something that the DNR and FEMA understand needs to get resolved, and they are definite players in getting that taken care of. But it will not be part of this process.
So does the county attorney's office feel that we should go ahead and approve the resolution and then continue to work on Mr. Lynch's concern side by side? We know, but identify yourself.
Laura Yannick, Assistant Carver County Attorney. Mr. Chair, yes, you can go forward today, and then, as Jason indicated, work with the players involved to deal with that other issue in Watertown.
And we will continue to work with Mr. Lynch on the concerns that City of Watertown has.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully, Mr. Lynch?
One more question.
Sure.
One more question. Does anybody know how long this is gonna take? Or how long, you know?
I didn't mean to laugh, but
I know.
this is government, so Jason, can you comment? But I can almost guess.
Yeah, I can give a little update on that, Commissioner Degler. Again, we're in the early stages. The DNR provided the county and the city with these new model numbers and an established elevation. Now, again, the city is the driver in all of this. They are talking with their council. There's an application process that is joint between the city and the county. We both have to sign, someone has to sign that application, that therefore it will probably be coming before you somehow, some way. But ultimately, we then have to do notifications to all the property owners that this affects. What's probably going to take place is, right now, it's a floodplain area, and I think based on the shrinking of that area, there is going to be a floodway, which makes it more restrictive as far as what people are going to be able to do. That particular area or body, it actually lies within the city limits and in the township itself under the county's jurisdiction. Therefore, the reason why the two entities needing to get involved. But again, it's notifications, getting that application in. I can't really speak to how long that's going to take, but we are obviously moving in the right direction, and it sounds like it could be something that's done sooner rather than later.
But a conservative guess would be sometime at the beginning of next year?
Yeah, I think definitely this next year is the goal. I mean, I don't see it having to take much longer than that, but again, I'm not with FEMA, and I don't know what their review process is either.
Mr. Lynch?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, not a definitive answer, but at least the
Right,
ball
but
is
it's-
rolling in the right direction.
It's the best answer you can give me, though.
Thank you very
Because
much.
I knew that before I asked. But thank you.
We still have to ask.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the public have any comments? Seeing none, any final comments by the board? Commissioner Workman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering about these two lynches at the Thanksgiving dinner table and how that goes sometimes.
I'm sure there's gonna be enough food at the table.
So, Mr. Chairman, so that I might alleviate some of my concerns about passing this thing on to FEMA, which is a secret society, a federal government secret society, I think. Our assistant county attorney is basically saying anybody that might have a problem with this map and these overlays does have recourse, even after we shove this along.
Just
Is that what I
Yanish,
heard?
we don't wanna put words in your mouth. Oh, Jason?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think the answer to that is if a property does end up being placed in what is a floodplain, they go through the same process everybody else does, and they go through that letter of map amendment, just like you would currently have done in the past.
Other thoughts? questions by the board? Seeing none and seeing none from the public, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Luchnick, second by Commissioner Ishii to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is now closed. And what is the wishes? Commissioner Luchnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Motion adopting a resolution enacting ordinance number 88-2818, amending the zoning code, chapter 152, in the official county zoning map.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Luchnick, second by Commissioner Workman. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is another public hearing of ordinance 87-2019, the Carver County Fee Schedule, and adoption of ordinance 87-2019 and the fee schedule. With that, is there a motion to open the public hearing to consider changes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ishii, second by Commissioner Lynch. To open the public hearing, is there any discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We now have a public hearing that's open, and with that, I'll call on Mr. Dave Frischman, our Finance Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, and good afternoon. This is normally Mary Kay's.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. She is both pregnant and moving today, moving her house, and my wife and I did that when she was pregnant with her third child, and so when she asked me for help, I was happy to say yes, I'll jump in. So things just worked out that she's in the process. Her house moved quicker than they thought. And so, anyway, so today, thank you for opening up the public hearing. The Minnesota statutes allow us to, okay, so we'll go over the agenda quick. So I'll give a quick overview. We are going to ask our Environmental Services Manager, Greg Ballot, to come up and talk about the solid waste fee. That's the one, the most significant change in the fee schedule. And then we'll have you close the public hearing and adopt the resolution. So, as I mentioned, the overview is our fee schedule is set every year. Minnesota statute allows the county to charge fees to cover the cost of providing various services. Public hearing has been scheduled for today to recommend changes to the county's 2019 fee-for-service schedule, which includes fees charged by the Carver County Regional Rail Authority. Prior to this meeting, a notice of public hearing was placed in the county's newspaper, and a copy of the proposed changes to the 2019 fee schedule is included in the board packet. These changes reflect increased cost as well as aligning our fees with other organizations. The area with most changes relates to the park services, where they tried to get their fees more consistent with other counties and other organizations in the metro area. And the one with the most financial impact, as I mentioned, is the solid waste fee. So we'd like to invite their Environmental Services Manager, Greg Bowe, to come up and provide a few more details about this change.
Mr. Bowe.
Mr. Chair, Honorable Commissioners, Greg Bowe, Environmental Services Manager, and I'm honored to be the one request with the biggest impact, so we're up here to just take a moment or two just to briefly explain what that's all about. We in the Environmental Services Department are...
And just so everybody knows, this isn't really news to us because we've held a number of workshops ahead of time, work sessions, and this has been explained, so this is basically for the viewing public.
Absolutely. So just a brief, quick overview, but thank you very much, yes. So the Environmental Services Department is requesting a $3 per unit increase in the solid waste, hazardous waste fee. And that fee increase will basically be used to accomplish two things, and that is number one, to decrease the impact on the general levy, and number two, to improve and expand special waste collections, household hazardous waste collections throughout the county.
Okay, you mentioned the fee.
Yes.
Who pays the fee?
That is a fee that is spread across residential units, both single family and multiple family, as well as businesses in the county. And it's done one fee of $33 per for a single-family home or a duplex or a triplex. Anything above a triplex will then pay 80% of that fee per unit multiplied by the number of units in that multiple family dwelling. And then in addition, businesses will pay a fee that has a rather complicated formula based on the value of that business, that commercial or industrial business.
Thank you for that explanation.
Absolutely. So the $3 per unit fee, as I say, will be used to take pressure off the general levy and to increase or expand those collection units. And as you can see by this table here, the two largest fees that we will be covering, or expenses we will be covering with that fee increase, would be a $37,458 shortfall or increase in payroll expenses that was going to be requested to be paid by the levy, and also a $60,000 need for mill and overlay of the driveway and the parking lot at the environmental center. We're still using the same driveway and parking lot as was there when we opened the environmental center back in the early 2000s. And it's become increasingly bumpy and pothole filled. There's a lot of issues there when you're driving around with a forklift hauling hazardous materials, and things are bouncing around on the pallets because of the bumps in the road. We also even worry about trips and falls from residents and workers alike when they're working or walking in that parking lot area. So this is a way for us to smooth that out and make it a lot more safe for residents, participants, and workers alike. And then the other items are smaller expenses, the increasing or expanding some of the collection events in the county, increasing or improving the efforts to recycle and collect organics at community events in the Carver County Fair, and then also adding organics collection to the rural drop-off sites, which is an item that has been requested by a lot of residents around the county and the state of Minnesota. And then also a one-time water sample that needs to be done at an organics study that we're doing at an arboretum site that's a part of a program that we're doing with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Now, the one in particular item that is important to point out is that 4 of these items are ongoing annual expenses. So we'll expect to see those expenses again likely in 2020 and on. There are 2 that are one-time expenses, and so what that means is we'll have those expenses in 2019, and then we can revisit this toward the end of 2019 and decide if we want to either drop that solid waste fee back a little bit because we won't have those one-time expenses again, or more than likely there'll be other calls for those dollars, either increased calls from our partner cities, townships, and businesses who would like some grant dollars to be able to do recycling, waste reduction, things like that in their entities, as well as increasing payroll expenses once again, and that ever-increasing rate of participation at the environmental center. So even though those one-time expenses won't be around in 2020, likely there will be other expenses lined up in the queue ready and needing some additional expenses as well, because we run a pretty tight ship and the numbers are pretty close every year. So in a nutshell, that's it. I just wanted to give a quick summary, and I'm here to answer any questions if you should have any.
Any questions by the board? We'll let the board ponder that for a little bit. And this is a public hearing. Well,
I'm good. Yep.
you're
I was just going to go to
okay,
this slide.
continue, Mr. Frischman. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
slide.
just trying to help.
Okay, I just wonder,
We're on the same
anybody from
page.
the public have anything to say? Any comments? If not, one last, throw it back to the board. Any comments of the board? If
Well,
not,
so you know, public, Mr. Chairman, I move to close the public hearing.
okay, there's a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Workman, second by Commissioner Lynch to close the public hearing. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. What's the wishes of the board? Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Ishii, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Luschnick to adopt the public hearing approving the 2019 fee schedule and ordinance. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moves on to 9.1, 2019 legislative priorities. With that, we'll call on our county administrator, Mr. Dave Hemsey.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Just give me 1 second. All right, there we go. Thank you. As we do each year around this time, I'd like to present the proposed 2019, in this case, legislative priorities. Let me start by thanking Commissioners Workman and Malushnik, who serve on our legislative committee. Claire Rowling, who I see just showed up, thank you, Claire, for coming, is our lobbyist that does a great job down at the Capitol. She's helped craft some of these. Our division directors and others provide input. Last but not least, but perhaps most importantly, Nick Kaktabi does a lot of the behind-the-scenes work. So thank you, Nick. This year is like others where we select 10 or so, in this case 11, priorities that we feel are particularly important to Carver County. There are literally dozens of other issues that we'll be advocating for at the Capitol, in some cases playing defense on. We rely on a number of other agencies, professional groups like the Minnesota Inter-County Association, which is known as MICA, or the Association of Minnesota Counties, AMC, to assist us in those. So just a handful here. What I'd like to do is we have in the past, have you adopt these. We'll send those out to our legislators, and of course we have some new legislators out there. We'll get them invited to a breakfast in December. I think the date is picked. I don't have that in front of me. You remember? 19th of December? 18th of December, thank you, Diane. In the morning, that'll be just the beginning of the discussion. And we'll continue that through the 2019 legislative session that starts in January. So with that, we'll start. And by the way, I think of the 11, 9 are issues we've had on the plate before. Now, some of the other ones have been revised based on changing circumstances, but this one has been on the platform before. These are not, by the way, in priority order. We're just listing these one at a time. So this one is to improve the eminent domain process for the property owners, and you likely remember a number of these. This proposed change is meant not only to benefit the landowner, but to benefit our organization. We're trying to extend this time frame where the last offer is submitted to the landowner, so there's time for negotiation. Right now it's 5 days. That time goes pretty darn quick, and in many cases, or most cases, we're not able to have those negotiation discussions and potentially settle these proposed offers without going through a complex legal process. I know, Mr. Chair, you had some wordsmithing you'd like to do if you wanted to recommend that now.
Mr. Hemsey, I think instead of saying improve the eminent domain process for property owners, just say revise the eminent domain appraisal process. Because, I mean, it's not just for property owners. It obviously benefits both sides. And so improve, that's just a matter of opinion. So that's why I think revise.
I think those are good changes. If the board's acceptable of that, we'd make those changes. I'll take questions one at a time if you have. Again, I have folks in the room here because these are very complex issues and I don't have all the insight and details into the full stories. Otherwise, we'll keep moving. Issue number 2, one that's pretty easy to understand given the tragic crash that happened out on Highway 212, and there's been a number of those over the years, of course. Provide funding for safety improvements along Highway 212. This particular request is for $38 million, so that would get us all the way from the city of Cologne to Nord Young America. So this does include the site where the most recent tragic crash happened, which is a $10 million cost for the reconstruction of that, the crossroads of 51 and 212. Any questions on this one? Okay, issue number 3. We're talking about Lake Waconia Regional Park in our building study later in the agenda. This one is the larger issue of upgrading the park. You will recall that last legislative session in 2018, we asked for approximately $11 million. we received $1.5 million. Or we asked for $11 million and we committed to half of that. We received $1.5 million from the state legislature, so thank you to our legislators and others. We also then matched that, so we have $3 million in the bank right now that we're working on improving the park. Unfortunately, that's not the real noticeable stuff that people really love to use. It's the infrastructure, it's the park, the pipes below the ground, the grading, those kinds of things. So this additional money, the $4.3 million that we would commit to matching with $4.3 million would get us those things that are more noticeable and very critical, including restrooms, concessions, picnic shelters, trails, and other amenities.
Any comments?
Good. This is a new one, I think. Lake Waconia, well, it's not necessarily new, but it might be new for our list here. The Lake Waconia Watercraft access, you might remember the DNR picked up. It was a 5-acre parcel adjacent to our property that they want to turn into a watercraft access site, so a boat access ramp. This would support that effort. No questions, I'll keep going.
Keep going.
We wrapped a number of other parks issues into number 5, the enhancement of funding for the Metropolitan Regional Parks systems. And I'll remind you, our parks are regional, so we rely on Metropolitan Council and state funding to assist us with in this case, operational expenses. So we're asking for no less than 40% of those actual operational expenses. Removing some barriers. They have barriers on the acreage requirements that define regional parks, and then dispersing parks and trails funds in the amounts you see on the board here. I know, Tom, your Commissioner Workman's pretty familiar with this one too. If you have any things to add to this, I think this is for the most part similar to what we've asked for in the past.
That's good.
This is a new one, and it's a great story with the absentee voting process. In 2019, in the general election, we had 11,500 plus votes come through the absentee balloting process, and you probably have heard from many of those voters that are very pleased with how that system is operating, so it's extremely popular. One thing that has happened though, the time frame is pretty tight, so we're asking that time frame is increased from 7 to 19 days to put those ballots directly in the box. Voters are allowed to provide those absentee ballots for a longer time period, but what happens currently is if they don't go into the ballot box and get it in our machines, then we end up manually hand counting them, which is a very burdensome, labor-intensive, and potentially a higher level of concern for errors, although I'd say we were 100% error-free this cycle, so very pleased to report that. So that is a new one for you to consider. I know other counties in Minnesota, I believe the group that represents the auditors is also planning on putting this on their platform, right, Claire?
So this would be a change that would affect not only Carver County, but the rest of the state also.
Yeah, we wouldn't propose just for us, so, but it's nice to have friends proposing the same thing. So we think this is a reasonable request. I know there's some discussion about how many days you want to increase this to, et cetera. Okay. Issue number 7. Hopefully Rod Franks is here. These are a little more difficult for me to get my hands around for whatever reason. They're complicated. Issue number 7, asking for sustainable funding for the Healthcare Access Fund. There's a law called Minnesota Care, created back in 1991, that provides coverage for the uninsured. At that time, the law called for the sunsetting of a 2% provider tax, which funded that program. And that sunsetting will be effective January 1 of 2020. So that obviously puts the program at jeopardy. So we're asking that the legislature finds a way to resolve that issue. There's also a 1% HMO premium tax, I think that would still be on the books. So it looks like it would be 2% short, which I don't have the amount in front of me, but we're talking pretty significant dollars and definitely putting a very important program at risk.
So our requested position is that they find a solution, but at this point, we're not recommending any solution that they could find?
No, this isn't prescriptive. I know, Rod, if you have some ideas on the kinds of solutions that are out there, Claire.
Mr. Rod Frank,
provide more, but you have to come up, Rod.
So as Administrator Hemsey has indicated, the 2% provider tax, which funded Minnesota Care, I think since 2007, will be sunsetting in 2020. Shortly thereafter, the Healthcare Access Fund will run out of money. And programs, as we have been funding them up to this point, will no longer be sustained at their current level. Once the ACA was passed in 2013, the state was a recipient of money from that program, and they were able to use funds from the Healthcare Access Fund to fund a number of other health-related issues, such as preventative programs through the SHIP program, for example, and other preventative programs in public health. So the impact of this is pretty extensive, not just on the actual medical assistance clients, but also on health programs, just generally, and especially preventive programs. One of the solutions, of course, is to repeal the sunset provision of the provider tax. Other solutions would include adjusting eligibility for persons receiving public programming. Other solutions may also include adjusting payments to medical providers and any combination of the above. And also exploring additional revenue sources to fill the shortfall.
Yeah, Mr. Franks, these programs that we're now funding, are they mandated that we fund those? Do we have to fund those programs now? My question is, if this 2% that isn't funded someplace, are we still going to have to do them, or does it magically disappear?
So as everything that I seem to have to come up here and explain, the answers are more complicated than I wish. But under the current eligibility rules, we would have to continue to fund these. So one of the solutions most likely would be, if a replacement funding source were not found, that rules of eligibility would be changed and not as many persons would be deemed eligible for public medical assistance programs. That would be one example. Or that the current level of payments being made to providers for those services could also be reduced, but currently, those payments are at a level that would need to be sustained unless changes were made to those types of rules over time.
What I was getting at too is you don't see it that it could possibly just fall back to local county taxpayers footing that bill.
Well, yes, there's that possibility. So, for example, Carver County is the mental health authority for Carver County, and we must ensure as the mental health authority that certain services are available to the residents of the county. Currently, most of the services that we provide, we receive third-party payments for, either from medical assistance, Minnesota Care, people on prepaid medical assistance insurance plans, and private insurance providers. If eligibility requirements were changed and people no longer had insurance through Minnesota Care medical assistance, we would still have to provide the service and pay for that service, and the local taxpayer would end up paying for those services, which are now being paid by these third-party payers.
Thus, the fact that this is so critical that the state finds a solution to this situation.
It is very critical, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Stand by if you can, because I'm going to have you cover the maintenance of effort issue. But I think I can handle the child protection issue because it was a big item in the last couple of rounds of budget. This relates to a number of significant changes that were made at the state level to the child protection services process, which is obviously very critical. However, the state has not lived up to their end of the bargain to provide 100% of the funding needed to do these mandated services. For example, in 2018, we have in our I'm sorry, in 2019, that budget, we have a proposed $111,000 for an assistant county attorney one, just to handle the additional workload and related issues that came as a result of this particular issue. There's $50,000 in court-appointed attorney fees to assist with this problem, and another $520 that's indirectly related to this particular issue. So that's $581,000 in 1 year. That was one of the biggest issues that we faced in our 2019 budget, putting that together. So I think that speaks for itself, Mr. Chair, unless there's other questions on this one.
Any other questions?
And I will have Rod cover the maintenance of effort issue, which is a complicated one too.
And I like that first word, sensible. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so maintenance of effort is a topic that Human Services directors around the state love to talk about and especially complain about. And so the idea behind maintenance of effort is a good one. It's to ensure that counties are maintaining an adequate level of funding in their health and human services programs, and especially the provision of mental health services. The unfortunate side of it is that it was based on a number, oh my gosh, I can't remember how far back that number goes, but clear 1990s, I think. So it was based on funding levels that were established in the 1990s, and yet we are expected to maintain services at that level. Now, one of the things that happened is the Affordable Care Act in 2013 actually changed that formula very drastically, because lots of the programs that we were actually funded now were funded through much more people becoming eligible for insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Yet we were required to maintain our spending at this higher elevated artificial level. And we can actually be penalized if we don't maintain spending at these levels. The other thing that we love to complain about is that it's a disincentive towards efficiency in the delivery of service. So we may find a more efficient way to deliver services that require less funding to do so, less staff to do so, but we're still providing the same level of outcomes that we had before. We could potentially be penalized. So it's really time, in our opinion, that the maintenance of effort policies by the state actually become a little bit more sensible and take into account the current state of reality about how we provide services.
Mr. Franks, are we all alone on this, or is there other counties that are seeing the same problem?
Yes, other counties are seeing this too, and I do believe that this will be a MICA position in their human services legislative platform as well.
Thank you.
I think, Rod, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this punishes the counties that are doing better work also, which,
Yep.
that's the word sensible. Let's get back to something that actually works. All right, a couple more. This is a new one in terms of the platform, but certainly this has been on our radar screen a long time. We're asking to continue to increase the appropriation for programs that enhance library services. There are three of the major programs listed in your budget packet, and they give some statewide dollar amounts, and basically we're asking that those are at least maintained, if not increased, in the 2019 legislative session. I know Commissioner Degler, you serve as the liaison to the library board, and if you have comments.
Yeah, I could just say that the funding for this area has not been increased for the last at least 10 years, so it's just asking that we can try to keep up.
And like our park system, this is a regional system that we're asking that the funding is either at least maintained, if not increased to a level of sustainability. All right, and finally, Metropolitan governance reform. This is the same position we held last year. We're with a group of suburban counties. We've worked on this, crafting this legislation. It's made it to the governor's desk twice now and gotten vetoed twice with Mr. Walls in office. We're crossing our fingers a little bit, not holding out a lot of hope, however, that this would make it across his desk, but we're continuing to work on it. And you can see the general concepts here, of course, are appointing elected officials, not holding elections, but having elected officials in those offices at the Metropolitan Council. And then we've worked with the cities regarding their appointments they would control theirs, we would control ours at the county commissioner level. Not sure if that staggered terms one is still in there or not. I know there were some final changes that were late. And then representation, which is one of the complaints about this issue, is that there's not good representation. But having that from every county government as regional bodies, and then voting based on population at the governance, at the Metropolitan Governance Council level. Any questions or thoughts on that one? Okay. I think that's it. So we're just looking for the motion to approve it.
Before we get the motion to approve, we have Ms. Claire Roebling here, our legislative lobbyist. Claire, do you want to say a few words on your thoughts on the upcoming legislature and or our priorities here?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. It's going to be a whole new environment down there this year with a new governor and a new House majority. And, you know, the Senate is a majority by one vote for the Republicans. So there will be a lot of ebb and flow, I'm sure. And I think we've seen Congressman Walz has made some commitments during the campaign. And I know that he probably plans to follow through, but he has to get it through the legislature, and there will be some differences of opinion there, of course. So some of these things may move rather easily, and some may not move at all, and that's just what we always expect. And you know, we will advocate through our local legislators first and foremost, and connections with chairs and whoever else we can work with to try and move our agenda forward.
Any questions for Claire? Commissioner Ishii?
And maybe not necessarily for Claire, maybe more so for Mr. Robchuk in the back of the room. These issues are all important, obviously, to the county. They wouldn't be on here. One that's near and dear to myself is the crossing at Bungards on Highway 212 and the County Road 51 intersection. My daughter, more so than I, have had classmates, etc., friends of hers that have perished either at Bungards or south of Cologne, and of course in Cologne, eventually they put in the J-turns. And Lyndon and I sat through all those meetings and listened to the community think that that was going to be the end of the world when those J-turns were put in, but they actually proved to be, I think, as safe as anything that's ever been out there, especially in that area. I don't believe there's been an accident. I don't believe there's been a fender bender in regards to those. But my question for either yourself or Lyndon is, and I know this is impossible to predict, everything's going to be new and a lot of new members. Do we think we have a shot at securing some more transportation dollars for situations such as that? That takes $10 million, I think, to put that new intersection in down there at Bungards. I think Bungards Creamery tells us there's 500 semis a month that roll out of there and head out on Highway 212. What do you think our odds may or may not be? And I know that's not a fair question and you can't predict that, but I'm so very curious about it that I think we'd be ready to stand on our heads to try to testify and try to make something happen out there.
Well, I would say that Governor-elect Walz is planning to get new transportation funding. He has said he wants a gas tax. Whether or not that'll get through the legislature, I don't know. And there will be a surplus, and that will be announced shortly. We'll see that the first week of December. And I have a feeling that some of that money will go to transportation projects. I don't know where your project for that intersection is on MnDOT's list. It helps probably that you might be able to commit some local resources because you have your transportation sales tax now. So they look at that a little closely to make sure there can be some local funding as well. But I do expect that there will be a fairly significant transportation package put out there, but whether or not it passes, I don't know. But
thank you.
Lyndon?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, yeah, I can't predict what will happen to the legislature. All I can do is give an update on what we're doing on the corridor. As you know, we have the two-lane gaps, one between Chaska and Cologne. A lot of momentum on that. We have a funding gap of about 12 million to complete that project. We're very confident that could happen by 2022. So we think think we're gonna have a construction project program to build 4 lanes between Chaska and Cologne in 2022. The reason I'm talking about that is it provides a lot of momentum, tremendous amount of momentum to fix the next piece, which is the 5-mile piece between Cologne and Norwood, where this intersection is. So we just keep working on this, and the spotlight is definitely on the corridor. And I know MnDOT wants to get this done. And at the same time, we are designing some possible solutions for the corridor between Cologne and Norwood, including that intersection. Could we do a standalone project there? So we're working behind the scenes to be ready. The next step, obviously, is to ask for some help. I think with the project getting programmed on the east side, I think we'll put a lot of pressure on to get the last piece fixed. And even recently, we applied for some Met Council funding through the TAB regional solicitation for $7 million. That's the maximum you get per project for the easterly segment, and it's looking pretty good. We're on the list, so there's a possibility that that gap could go from 12 million down to 5. So you just keep working on these small amounts of funding, and then unfortunately when a crash like that happens, it really elevates the discussion, which is a good thing, but it also creates other issues. We would prefer to do an entire project, obviously, from Cologne to Norwood, but if we can at the very least fix that intersection, which will be complex. It'll still have to be a large intersection to accommodate all the trucks and all the other users. Then it'll be an arcade similar to Cologne or something. Maybe even a bridge. We can't eliminate the possibility of that. We want to look at everything for the long term. So all I can commit to you is we're working. That's our biggest priority, that road corridor.
Other questions for Claire or Lyndon? Thank you very much. We have a recommendation in front of us to move to approve Carver County's 2019 legislative platform.
So,
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Workman, second by Commissioner Lynch. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lynch.
I'd like to make the motion to adjourn as the County Board of Commissioners and convene as the Carver County Ditch Authority.
Is there a second to that motion? Second by Commissioner Ishii. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to adjourn as the Board of Commissioners and reconvene as the Ditch Authority, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're now the Ditch Authority, and with that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Frischman for, again, from our financial services for the ditch assessments.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair and Board of Commissioners. In front of you is our recommendations for 2019 ditch assessments. As you recall, this is something we do each year where the cost of the services that we're providing through Mike Wanis at our watershed district. He provides these services, and then we collect keeps track of the costs, and then we charge it back to the home property owner. So this is not, there's no property tax dollars involved. This is just between the cost of the ditches being spread over the property owners.
Any questions for Mr. Frischman?
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the ditch assessments for 2019.
Motion by Commissioner Ishii, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lynch. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. With that, is there a motion to adjourn as the Carver County Ditch Authority?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ishii, second by Commissioner Maluchnik to adjourn as the Ditch Authority. And after we adjourn as the Ditch Authority, we will go into a work session following. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned, and we will enter into the work session on Lake Waconia Event Center Facility Analysis. Thank you.